blow this up.
Look alive, Bomb Squad. We are back for another installment of Let's Blow This Up. I'm your host, Jason Sircone, and it is the conclusion of the solo series here in season 3 of Let's Blow This Up. It is wind down week here on the show. A little bittersweet, I have to say. Had a great time, of course, putting these episodes together, and of course, the live stream with all of the co-host collective. Off the charts. A lot of fun. But here we are. It's the end of the season. This is one of those things, like I said, bittersweet, because creating this content, doing this, just being in the podcast space and having an opportunity to create content and bringing it directly to you, that's what fires me up. I love doing this. But at the same time, it's nice to be able to take a little break and evaluate some things, talk about what's coming next, look at the next iteration of the podcast. That's why I love doing it in this format, because I give myself this built-in break, knowing that I'm going to take a few minutes to recharge the batteries, get back on track, and when I come back to you, I'm coming back at my very best. Now, at this stage, I am feeling no form of burnout whatsoever. I will say that there were some things that I learned in doing this season that, I would probably do differently, but there's still some things that I feel went very well. And that's what I wanted to do today, was provide a little bit of a recap of what I learned doing my podcast this way, because it's beneficial to understand what type of format you want to roll out and how it's going to impact your world as a whole. Because I will say, doing 3 episodes a week the way that I did it for a 12-week period, it was great. If I had to do it for a long period, like if I was doing this every single week, that would be difficult. That would be hard. And just because there's different elements within this type of production that made me realize, like, again, having fun doing it, but at the same time would probably need a little bit of assistance. And right now I do this on my own. So I could bring in somebody to help me manage some of the aspects, but at the same time, I look at it like what I'm doing doesn't necessarily require that. So I'm okay. Again, feeling no burnout and feeling zero regret. There's nothing, oh man, I shouldn't have done that this year. No, or this season, but no, none of that. So let's talk a little bit about what you've experienced throughout season 3 and what I've experienced in putting this content together for you. So to give you a little bit of backstory, season 1 of Let's Blow This Up wasn't necessarily built to be about podcasting. And, looking back on that, it was probably a little bit foolish, because I pivoted away from a podcast that wasn't talking about that either. And as I came into Bombtrack Media, as I launched this company, I wanted to speak more to that, but then my podcast didn't fully. Like, I had a couple episodes that did, and then 8-episode season to kick things off. But in reality, that probably should have been what it was from go. Then we move into the live stream series in season 2, and it was a conscious decision to say, you know what, I've never really dove fully into live streaming. I want to try this out. I want to see how this goes. And I loved it. I loved that live environment. It spoke very strongly to the fact that I have really moved away from doing anything scripted. I like to just let my emotions come out and pour out my content from my heart, from my mind. And that was a perfect environment to let that happen, because the conversations were just very organic, and I didn't come to them with any questions. That's how I did season 1 as well. Let's see if I can just have a conversation. And I knew I could do that. And I really wanted the podcast to be built around that motive. So here we are, season 2, live streaming, doing the exact same thing. And a few episodes in, the conversation really started to shift towards podcasting. And it made complete sense. And that's where I knew we had found the groove. This is where I want to be. And that's how the rest of season 2 unfolded. So it was towards the end of season 2 that I was also doing another podcast that's still out there. It's retired, but all the content is still there for you to listen to. It was called Podcast Theory. So I was doing the live streams for Let's Blow This Up and talking about podcasting. And I was doing the solo episodes and talking about podcasting over on Podcast Theory. And I remember this clear as day. I was sitting in one of my networking groups, and I had the podcast theory episodes pre-recorded and scheduled to go out at 12 o'clock every day, or every Tuesday and Thursday, I should say. And it was a Thursday, and I got the alert on my phone that the episode had gone live. And for whatever reason, it hit me. Dude, why are you doing 2 podcasts about the same thing? If you're going to do 2 podcasts, do them about separate things. Or combine your efforts. This isn't worth doing 2 shows for because you're dividing the audience for no reason. You want them listening to all this great podcast content, get them under one umbrella. It just hit me like a ton of bricks, and I said, you know what? Now is the time to make that change. I was approaching the end of season 2. Now let's move into season 3, but let's do so in a different way. And one of the things I love about doing this season format, it's allowed me to make these additions and revisions and change things up and really find the groove of where I want to be. So I knew that it was time to retire podcast theory, and it was time to come into season 3 of Let's Blow This Up with that same type of format, but again, everything under one umbrella. And that's what we did. So as you've experienced, as you've listened to season 3, and if this is the first episode of season 3 that you're consuming, jump back in the archives. There's 30 plus episodes from this season alone, all very podcast content driven, focused on various aspects of our industry. What can you do to make podcasting a strong part of your brand? That's what these conversations were built around. So if you go back, what I decided was, you'll hear this when you go back, keeping the live streams as they were, because those were a blast, and I loved having those live unscripted conversations. I wanted to bring the solo element of podcast theory over to Let's Blow This Up. We did that. And I felt something cool. And this was an idea from my friend Jay Franzi. He said he'd listened to a couple shows that had a rotating selection of co-hosts or guests. You could define them however you like. But I had liked that idea of what can we do to bring new voices in on a weekly basis and tackle different subjects. So it's not just me, and it's not just one-on-one through the live stream. We're also adding a third perspective on various topics. And that's where I reached out to some of my friends in the podcast industry, people that I trust the most, people that I've collaborated with before. And that's where the Co-Host Collective series was born. And I put some subjects on the table and felt like this is something I feel we all can tackle in a collective atmosphere. We can all have good conversations and really make this all come together in a nice packaged way for the Bomb Squad to consume. And my friends that jumped on board loved the idea, and we're off and running. So that's what really brought season 3 together. So again, if you haven't listened to any part of season 3 other than this, what you'll discover when you go back in the archives, we've got 12 episodes that were all about the Co-Host Collective, different combinations of my friends and I coming together for 30-minute deep dives on different podcast topics and things that needed to be addressed, some things that we felt like we could have some fun with. That was that series. The live stream series also stayed in place for Wednesday evenings at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. And there were 11 of those episodes. And then the solo episodes, like you're enjoying with me today, 12 of those. So grand total of 35, if you're not keeping score at home, made up season 3 of Let's Blow This Up. Now, as I said at the top of the show, absolute blast putting this content together. That said, it wasn't without its pains. And they were manageable pains. So it wasn't like Jason's going to go into dramatic mode here. No, nothing like that at all. What I learned was getting everybody scheduled to make this come together was not the easiest thing in the world. Now, it wasn't hard either. It wasn't like this huge degree of difficulty to the point where I was regretting what I had done. But I knew that everybody else had an agenda in their life. It's not just, hey, we're going to drop everything to be on Jason's show. They've got businesses to run. They've got families to raise. They've got kids to feed. There's so much else that goes into play. So I had to take that into consideration because I was asking for not a lot of time, but at the same time, this was a slight disruption in the normal day-to-day. But overall, it all came together smoothly when we got our communication roadblock out of the way, which was funny. I thought Slack would be the best place for us to communicate. Turns out a group text was much better. So to the Co-Host Collective, I want to say thank you for everything that you brought to Let's Blow This Up. Your contributions cannot be matched, and I appreciate the time that you spent pouring your emotions and your thoughts and your commentary into these subjects. So Mark Ronick, Jay Franzi, Tracy DeForge, Simona Costantini, Megan Shields, and Anna Xavier, thank you so much for everything that you brought to Let's Blow This Up. Again, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do that. Moving on to the live stream series, that went pretty much as smoothly as possible, and only had one person that unfortunately was not able to attend the scheduled meeting, so we missed that episode. But overall, everything fell into place very nicely, and if you had an opportunity to listen to some of those episodes, they're jam-packed with great conversation. So all of that, of course, in the archives, and if you actually want to watch those or any of the episodes of season 3 of Let's Blow This Up, they're all live on the Bombtrack Media YouTube channel, so you can go check those out at any time. And then this series, this solo series, this to me is where I really feel like I thrive as a podcaster. And that's just my own opinion. You may feel differently, but I love this environment. I love recording solo podcasts. I've done it for a long time. It was one of those things that once I got into the groove of how to do it well, I really fell into it and fell in love with it. So I want to continue to build on this. This was why when I was retiring Podcast Theory, I didn't want to just cut that element out. I knew that solo podcasting needed to be a part of Let's Blow This Up in some way, shape, or form. And here we are. Going forward, now that season 3 is officially in the books, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you've already experienced the live stream that is live here on the channel. If you're listening to the audio version of this episode of Let's Blow This Up, the audio replay of our season finale live stream with the Co-Host Collective will be out tomorrow. And that's it. We are officially bringing down the curtain on season 3 of Let's Blow This Up. And it's time for me to take a couple months off and recharge. But I'm also thinking about the future of the show. Here's the thing. As I said many times through our conversation thus far, I love this. I had a blast doing it. In fact, I'll drop this. I don't know where it's going to go, but I'll put it out into the atmosphere and into the universe and see if it ever becomes a thing. I've had some side discussions with some of the folks from the Co-Host Collective, and we had so much fun putting those episodes together. I had said, wouldn't it be cool if this was just its own podcast? Like whether we do it once a week or twice a week or whatever, but just having this type of podcast to where it's never the same group of people. It's always a different set of hosts, and every week we're tackling different subjects. Maybe we don't even do it about podcasting. Maybe this is a podcast where we have an unlimited number of people on the list to be hosts, but every time we do a new episode, it's a new group, and we're talking about various subjects. And we can interchange those people and have different personalities coming together. I think that would be a lot of fun, and the people I've talked to thought it was a really cool idea too. So stay tuned. Maybe that's something that's going to happen in the near future. We'll see. Only so many hours in a day. But I had so much fun doing this, as I said, but this is absolutely not what I would recommend to any of my clients that I'm working with. Being in the space for 10 years, you gain more of an understanding of how things flow and what's going to make the most sense. And for somebody coming in brand new, like if I was just starting out with podcasting, it would never cross my mind to do 3 episodes a week and do 3 different formats and set this up for, again, 3 episodes a week is a lot. And if you're going to do it every week, the full year, that's a lot too. Ask my friend Mark Ronick. He does 5 a week live every morning from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. on Clubhouse, the podcasting morning chat. They have those episodes recorded live, and then they turn them into podcast episodes that go out later that day or later that morning. So there's a lot in play to make that podcast go off without a hitch, and him and his team do it with reckless abandon. And I mean that in a good way, because it always comes together very well. And I don't want to say perfectly, because Mark would be like, no, dude, that's not perfect. But at the same time, I will say what they do is phenomenal to stick to that schedule and make that content come out as well as they do. But when I'm working with clients, I'm typically working with businesses. And if you're in that realm, this wouldn't be how I would say you should start a podcast. I'm very big on seasons, as I've done here with seasons 1, 2, and 3 of Let's Blow This Up. But I'm shifting my vernacular and the way that I'm defining a season to what I'm calling a series. And I don't believe I'm splitting an atom and breaking new ground with that. I know there are many series of podcasts out there, but I feel this format is one of the best ways for a business to capitalize on podcasting, especially if they've never done it before. That's the most important thing that I take away from any of the things that we talked about on season 3. When I look at podcasting as a whole, the thing that I look at, as I've said many times here on the show, the reason I launched Bombtrack Media, or one of the big missions behind Bombtrack Media, was to take time into consideration when it comes to a creator's schedule. We have a lot of gurus and a lot of people out there saying that you have to be doing weekly podcasting and you have to do multiple episodes. And I've talked about this ad nauseum. And those people are over here saying that. And then on this side, I'm looking at statistics that say that 90% of podcasters don't get past 3 episodes. And there's a number of stats out there that are very similar to that. And that's a huge disparity to me. Why would we have this enormous chasm between what people are saying you have to do to the level of success that creators are experiencing? And I believe a lot of it is people jumping into this medium without a full understanding of what it takes to succeed, or a willingness to push this person away that's saying you have to do it this way and this is why, and put your own definition of success into play. Because your goals are way different than mine. And my goals are way different than this guy over here telling me how I should be doing it. So you have to evaluate everything for what you want to achieve with your podcast. If you're doing a podcast for your business, more than likely the goal is to establish authority, provide knowledge, put something in play that could serve as a sales tool, something that's going to educate people to the point where they might say, okay, this is the person I want to work with. I know they can help me solve my problem. I've been listening to them for X amount of episodes, and now I've built enough trust in them to take the next step. Your podcast needs to be positioned just for that. And if that's the goal, then great. That's how you set it up. You don't need to be there every week to make that happen. Nor do you need to do 3 episodes a week like I just did for season 3. I look at series-based podcasting as the way to go because, for one, you can get incredibly focused on what you want your brand to be and what you want your message to be. So if you've got specific aspects of your business or your industry that you really want to dive into, you can create a 6-part, an 8-part, a 10-part, whatever episode number you land on. You can create a series based around that subject matter, and then you put it out all at once, and you give your listeners and viewers an opportunity to binge all of that content, thus learning why you are the solution that they've been looking for. You don't have to drip that out one at a time. Let them binge. This is a binge society. Look at streaming services. They are setting up this whole platform to keep you locked in and watching more than one episode at a time. Build your podcast in that same fashion, and you can give people an opportunity to learn so much about what they're looking for that by the time they're done listening, they know you are the answer. You are the solution they've been looking for. On top of that, you have an opportunity by building out a series to give yourself such a well of repurposable content to draw from that you could literally use your podcast as the primary marketing catalyst in your business. Have this content in place and determine where else you want to touch your customers. So if you're looking at building a strong website presence, you want to do blogs that have that SEO friendly appeal to them. You want to have a stronger social media presence. You want to do ad campaigns on Facebook and on Meta and on Facebook, Instagram, Meta as a whole, or even LinkedIn, maybe even X or Twitter, or Twix as my friend Jay Franzi will call it. Depending on where you want that presence to be built, you have content built within your podcast that you can then repurpose and utilize to get in front of people on a number of different platforms. Now, if you're building your business and the idea is to create content that touches these people, helps them understand why you're the answer that they've been looking for, bring them into your orbit so they can continue to learn about you and build trust, you don't need millions of downloads to make that happen. If your goal is to grow your business and generate new leads and turn those listeners into leads, leads into customers, customers into brand advocates, it doesn't matter which platform brings them in as long as they arrive at the party. And there's no limit to how many different series you could put together for your podcast. You could do this at any frequency that you like. Now, I wouldn't say do like a 5-episode series or a 6-episode series and then fall off the planet forever. That's the foundation. You have to be strategic about how you use this approach, but at the same time, once the series is done, now it's out there working for you. And as you repurpose that content, you can do that as much as you want. You could pull from all of those transcripts and all of those videos and all that audio for as long as you like, and then do another series and then do the same, lather, rinse, repeat. There is a lot of value in that for businesses because I know time is one of the biggest factors. And it becomes increasingly difficult as you reach different points in the year. When you get to your quote unquote busy season, it's harder to put yourself in the position of, I need to sit down and I need to make this podcast content this week so our show can continue to go out with consistency. It becomes less and less of a priority when you're constantly put up against the wall like that. And then your podcast starts to fall back. And that's where you start to lose the momentum. Instead, don't let that become a factor. Put yourself in a position where you can always win. You can always create content that's going to serve your marketing purposes. And you're not going to burn out by doing so because you build in those breaks. You can create and produce that content in a very short time frame. And then from there, you move on to the other priorities in your business. It doesn't become this thing that you have to do every week. It's something that you can capitalize on in the moment, build that content out, have it well planned so you know exactly what you want that message to deliver. Once that content's out there, now you're in a position to win. That's what Let's Blow This Up is going to be going forward. And the reason why I want to move it to this type of format is to create a template for you. I want you to see this in action. This is what I'm going to do with each episode once I put the next series together. So coming out of season 3, we'll be moving into series, technically, and call it season 4, but it's going to be a series, and it will be all around a certain subject. And I'm going to take that content and repurpose the crap out of it. And I'm going to use it on a number of my different platforms. I'm going to use it to achieve my goals that I have. But one of my biggest goals is that you, as a viewer or listener of Let's Blow This Up, you see how this works and how it could impact your brand. This is the way to go for businesses. Now, this is not a knock against weekly podcasting. If you have that kind of time in your schedule to do a weekly show or do multiple episodes a week, you can run with that and more than likely be successful as long as you remain consistent and you understand what kind of time goes into producing content on that level. But I know time is one of the biggest factors that holds people back from capitalizing on this. And this approach gives you your time back. And it allows you to experience podcasting for all the things that it can do for your business. And as you move forward, you may decide, you know what? Being here weekly does make sense for me. And then you can make that transition. But instead of coming into it thinking that you've got to do all this content and you've got to be there weekly and put yourself in a position where you might not be able to function because you know you've got other responsibilities on your plate, building a series and having that strategy ready to go is going to serve your brand in a lot stronger fashion. This is what I've shifted everything I'm doing at Bombtrack Media to. So as we go forward with Let's Blow This Up, when the next iteration of content hits you, it's going to be all based around series. And then that's what it will be going forward. Again, this serves as a template for you, and it allows me to create in a fashion where what I highly recommend to others, because again, you've got other things on your plate. Podcasting should not be an anchor. It should be a pillar of everything you do for marketing your brand. So if you want to learn more about this, my recommendation would be to jump over to bombtrackmedia.com, set up a free discovery call with me. We can dive into this a little bit more. I can explain how it might work for your brand. You can tell me your ideas for what you'd like to do with a podcast. and we'll take it from there. It's a free call. And like I said, no pressure. I'd love to hear what your ideas are, and we'll see where things go. And if this makes sense for your brand, we'll roll with it, baby. So that's it. Listen, as I said many times here today, this has been an absolute blast this season. I love this format. If I wasn't thinking about you as a client and other clients understanding more about the series-based approach, I would probably do season 4 very similar, if not exactly the same as I did season 3. Those 3 different formats, 3 days a week. Honestly, when I rolled into this, that's where I was thinking, where I was going to go for the next season. But then I realized it probably makes more sense to come your way with exactly what I would show you to do versus saying, oh yeah, I do my podcast this way, but you should do it this way. But from the bottom of my heart, if you've been here for the whole season or you're just here today for the very first time discovering this podcast, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for viewing. If you've provided any feedback in any way, whether it be through a review, through social media, through a phone call, I've gotten a number of different people reach out to me in a number of different ways. It means everything to me, and it allows me to continue improving upon my skill set and what I bring to you from a content perspective. So, as we bring down the curtain on season 3 of Let's Blow This Up, as I said, a little bittersweet. I always get emotional this time of year because it's going to be so sad not coming to you every week, but at the same time, it feels good knowing that there is now a break on the other side of this episode. But again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for making Let's Blow This Up what it is. I hope that you'll join me for the next iteration when I roll out the new series, which we'll call Series 4. I think now that Season 3 is in the books, there is now a very strong foundation for this podcast to continue to grow these series that I move with going forward. Over 50 episodes in the archives, all with a very strong message when it comes to how you can leverage podcasting for your brand. Yes, it was done in different formats, but there's a lot that you can learn, and then you'll continue to learn as we go forward in the future. So that's it. That's going to bring down the curtain on this episode and this season of Let's Blow This Up. As I said, if you're catching this on the audio side of things, you're going to be able to enjoy the audio version of our live stream with the co-host collective to wrap up season 3. A lot of finales this week, but ultimately it's been a hell of a ride. I'm glad you've been here for it in some way, shape, or form. Please reach out if you have any additional feedback. Please drop a rating and review if you feel so inclined. And until our paths cross again, this is Jason Sircone on Let's Blow This Up, reminding you to stay explosive.